Hi, Dr. Yoshiram here with Oasis Family Medicine, and this is another video about COVID and the vaccine. And I am going to share a special quote that I found by Martin Luther King Jr. By the time this goes out to you, his special day will have passed by maybe up to a week. But I'm going to read it. You may be 38 years old, as I happen to be. This is Martin Luther King Jr. speaking. And one day, some great opportunity stands before you and calls you to stand up for some great principle, some great issue, some great cause. And you refuse to do it because you are afraid. You refuse to do it because you want to live longer. You're afraid that you will lose your job, or you are afraid that you will be criticized, or that you will lose your popularity, or you're afraid that someday somebody will stab you or shoot at you or bomb your house, so you refuse to take the stand. Well, you may go on and live until you are 90, but you're just as dead at 38 as you would be at 90. And the cessation of breathing in your life is but the belated announcement of an earlier death of the spirit. Martin Luther King Jr. And this quote is speaking to me now because I want to speak up, speak out, speak my mind. I have spent the last 10 months spending a lot of time on the COVID front, in the COVID situation, and questioning constantly and being rather disappointed with how our country has handled this on so many fronts, not one front. And so I want to speak out. From the beginning, I said something smells fishy about this, and I didn't know, and I didn't want to say something publicly that I might come to regret. And, science has, over the past 10 months, science has deteriorated into non-science. And the scientific method has been just obliterated. And the way we are going about treating this pandemic is not scientific at all. And I don't remember who said this quote, but it's one that's popping to mind right in this moment, and it's never trust any data that you have not manipulated yourself. And there's been a lot of data manipulation going on and a lot of finger pointing. So that one speaks to me for sure. Now, in spite of everyone's finger pointing and horrible scientific viewpoints, I would invite everyone to forgive all that has happened. I do think that love has a strong place for where we want to go, for where I want us to go, where I want the world to go. But at the same time, this has been completely mishandled. And, there were some, obviously the Pfizer vaccine came out and the Moderna. Those are the only two that are currently available in the US. And the numbers were interesting. I would say that in looking in depth at the actual super long official reports, um, the side effect profile was pretty decent. It's still interesting to me that they, had to inject, for the Pfizer, I think it was over 20,000 individuals, and they saved something like 8 severe deaths, plus or minus one. I'm pulling these stats out of memory, but they are ballpark correct. And so you figure, okay, you had to inject, you have to inject over 2,500 people, maybe almost 3,000 people to prevent one severe COVID death. That's a pretty shitty statistic, even though they claim 95% effectiveness. Because at the end of the day, I don't really care if someone gets COVID and is asymptomatic or has cold symptoms or even flu-ish type of symptoms, right? Might be a little bit uncomfortable for a couple days, but hey, it is the winter time, and we it used to be okay to get a little bit sick. What I do care about is people dying from this who shouldn't be dying from this, right? So my heart goes out to those people who have passed or those who know someone who have passed. Also to the long haulers, right? It doesn't just Deaths aren't the only thing that matter in these pandemic statistics. Severe cases matter, deaths matter, long haulers matter. But still, from the Pfizer vaccine, when I really look at those numbers, it's you got to inject almost 3,000 people to prevent 8 plus or minus 1 severe COVID infections. I wonder what would happen if we got all 20,000 people's levels of vitamin D up, vitamin C, magnesium, and zinc. Just those 4 nutrients. I mean, you could pick a bunch of other vitamins or minerals to focus on, but those 4, I wonder what those stats would be. Now, the Moderna statistics, the way I look at them, definitely better, but you're still looking at having to vaccinate something like 15,000 people. Again, these stats are off of my memory, but they are ballpark correct. And 15,000 people to prevent 30 severe cases. Now that's much better statistics than the Pfizer vaccine, and doing math on a video is not my strong suit, but that's probably like 1 in 500. So you got to vaccinate 500 people to prevent 1 severe COVID case, right? Again, those are, and yet they claim something like 94, 95% effective, right? Now, again, remember that quote, only trust the data that you have manipulated yourself, right? The way they spin this data, the way they spin these words, lead people to say, oh my gosh, 90%, 95% effective. Wow, this is great. In reality, you got to vaccinate somewhere, again, depending between Moderna or Pfizer, 1 in 500 people just to prevent 1 severe case. You got to vaccinate almost 3,000 people to prevent 1 severe case. So again, I would posit the question, what would happen if we took those either number, right, over 20,000 or 15,000 people and got their levels of vitamin D, vitamin C, zinc, and magnesium up to optimal levels ideally, or even just okay levels, right? Then what would happen? It's just an interesting question. I think it would make a lot of difference, right? I'm going to send out 2 links that would have been too pansy to send out before. But again, in reading some Martin Luther King quote and reading that particular Martin Luther King quote, it spoke to me. And the reality is I know a lot of people look up to me for my professional advice. So I say everything that I say on video or to a patient or in public at large with careful thought. But I think it's time that I send out a couple of other links. I would encourage you to especially listen to the one with Dr. Cowan. He's a brilliant person, and I just love the way he views life. I would challenge you to try to poke holes in everything he says. I think that should always be done. I mean, try to poke holes in everything I say, right? I am not always correct. I reserve the right to change my mind. Always, I will always give you the best advice I can. But take a listen to the Dr. Cowan one, the link that I send you at very minimum, and again, try to poke holes in what he says. I've definitely thought of a few holes or a question I'd love to ask him directly, for sure. So I'm not saying I agree with 100% of what he says, but I think challenging the mind should be done, especially in these times, as people are encouraged to inject an experimental biological agent into themselves, right? And I'm not saying don't get the vaccine. I am so for informed consent. And it looks like there are side effects outside of what the studies report. Like now we're getting into vaccinating millions of people, and there's side effects, right? And we don't know what the exact side effect profile is or what percentage of people, right? No scientist should ever say that there's no side effects, right? It's simply there's obviously side effects. There's side effects whether you're talking about this vaccine or any other vaccine or any medication or any herb, right? There's always going to be side effects. The question is what percentage of people are going to have what type of side effects, right? And so I think there should be more informed consent about the true statistics of if you get this experimental biological injection, how likely is it to actually prevent a severe COVID infection and or death, right? Not to mention, might I still pass it? Might I still get it and pass it on, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Well, no, I guess I should go back. So I'm not discouraging people from getting vaccinated, but be very clear, this is not FDA approved. It's only an emergency use authorization, right? This is not, this is an experiment. So if you want to sign up for an experiment, then go ahead. Like all experiments, we need the data. And so to volunteer for that is a noble thing. But just be very precise and understand that you are signing up for an experiment. Okay, and if you're totally comfortable with that, then great. Currently, the only people that I would truly, almost across the board, recommend get this vaccine is those people who are scared, right? And if your scaredness is keeping you locked up to a point that it's affecting your psychology and your happiness levels greatly, then this vaccine is a great way to bring some additional comfort to you, hopefully. So currently that's who I would recommend get the vaccine. Everyone else I would recommend do other simple things, right? There's ways to prevent this and ways to treat this. This does not need to be a deadly condition, in my opinion, from what I've seen after treating COVID positive patients, including very sick ones, for 10 months now, coming up on 11 months. No, we're still at 10 months. I won't exaggerate. So those are some more of my thoughts. Check out these. I'm just going to send a couple links this time, but definitely watch the Dr. Cowan video, please. All right, Dr. Yoshi Long. I do know my own name, Dr. Yoshi Ram with Oasis Family Medicine, and take care. Much love to you all.